Hi. I did not think I would be back talking about Silent Hill so quickly after my last Silent Hill video, but circumstances occurred and here I am. And by the blatant post-it note on my forehead and the cherry blossoms adorning my face, and also the title of the video that you just clicked on, it's safe to say I am talking about Silent Hill, the short message. The first Silent Hill game to be released since 2012's Downpour. It is a short game. Like its title suggests, I believe I finished it in about 2-ish hours. So, while it is not a full-length game, I think it is being considered the next step in the Silent Hill franchise. I'm gonna take this off my head because I mostly just did it for a thumbnail. More on that later, for sure. For those of you that don't know, my name is glitchwitch.jpg. You can just call me glitchwitch. I've made a few videos on Silent Hill, ranging from how much I love Silent Hill 4, some Silent Hill makeup that came out, and then most recently, and most successfully or unsuccessfully, a video that I made in defense of Silent Hill 2, the remake. Not really defense, but more like, hey, can we not just give up on it before it's out? To quiet the one individual that commented saying that I'm the best shill that Konami can afford, let me tell you, buddy, A, Konami, while stupid, they're not going to pay a YouTuber that doesn't make gaming content with 450 subscribers any money to defend their already poorly received remake. That's all. I did that for free. That was for me. Spoiler alert. There are elements of modern Silent Hill I'm not thrilled with after playing this game. So a few people in the comments of that video did say, what do you think about the short message? I didn't mention the short message because I had talked about all of the other games that had been announced at the Silent Hill broadcast back when the 2 remake was announced, Forte was announced, Townfall was announced, and the movie was announced, and Ascension. They hadn't announced the short message. Just parts of the short message had been leaked prior to even any of these announcements, but it was not formally announced, so I just left it out of that last video because I was mostly just talking about the timeline of the 2 remake. It just didn't really pertain. And also, I had not had the ability to play it. So when I recorded that video, it was shortly after the 2 remake combat trailer came out and the short message was available to play. I did not have a PlayStation 5. As of recording, less than 24 hours ago, my husband and I purchased a PlayStation 5 as our delayed Christmas and birthday gifts to each other. So, all of a sudden, I had the ability to play with the short message. We played it because we love Silent Hill. And I was going to make a video more in line with my typical internet horror content this week. I've been pushing off a Baraska video for months now because I'm scared to talk about it and I love it so much that I don't know that I can do it justice. I chose instead today to talk about a much more chill and comforting topic, that being a game with no less than 4 hotline warnings. And you may think, ha ha ha, she's being sarcastic. I'm not. I think that the Silent Hill, the short message, is a more calm and comforting experience than anything that happens in the creepypasta Baraska. So stay tuned for that fun video in the future. Before I get into my thoughts and feelings about the short message, what the hell is it? Silent Hill, the short message is a short form Silent Hill, I'm gonna call it mainline game. Konami released on January 31st of 2024, free to play on the PlayStation 5. There's no way to purchase it besides purchasing a PlayStation 5. It is the only thing I have played on my PlayStation 5, so you could argue that I spent $500 plus US tax just to play Silent Hill, the short message. As of right now, at least. It is kind of crazy that after 12 years of nothing, Konami just dumps a game for free to play. And yes, it is short. I think people would be very pissed if you had to pay for this just because it is so short. So I understand why they did that, and I think it was kind of a like, we know you're angry about so many things, here is a gift. And I think that worked for some people, and I think it made other people angrier. And you know what? I understand both sides, because I'll get it out of the way. I don't hate the short message. I do not think it's perfect either, but I'll get into that more later. So this game is put out by Konami, obviously. It is developed also by Hexadrive, which is a Japanese development company that has worked with Konami, Square Enix, Capcom, Nintendo. Like, they've been all over the place. They've done some Mario stuff. They've done some Final Fantasy stuff. This is their first time working on a Silent Hill game because, you know, they barely existed by the time Silent Hill stopped making games. They are not working on any of the other upcoming games. Every Silent Hill game that has been announced is being developed by a different studio. Great job, Konami. Love the lack of through line with any of this. The short message is not set in Silent Hill proper, which not the craziest thing ever. We've had Silent Hill Homecoming primarily set in Shepherd's Glen, which is like the sister town to Silent Hill. It's like a town next door. I call Silent Hill is the Catholic version of the Order, and Shepherd's Glen is the Protestant version of the Order. I can make a whole video about that. Let me know if you want me to make a whole video about that. And then in my beloved Silent Hill 4, you have Ashfield Heights. Not unheard of, you know, for it to be different, and I think Downpour is the most definitive, like, Silent Hill can be anywhere you want it to be type thing, because the Silent Hill that Murphy goes to does not feel similar whatsoever to the Silent Hill we see in, like, 1, 2, and 3, and even 4 when Henry does end up in Silent Hill. But this is the furthest we've ever been out of Silent Hill, because this game takes place in Germany, in a fictional town called Kettenstadt, and this isn't the last time we're going to see this, because Silent Hill Forte, one of the other mainline, like, longer games coming out, is set in 1960s rural Japan. So that one's going to be very interesting, because not only is it physically very far away, but it's also set way, way, way before the events of Silent Hill 1. It will be the chronologically oldest setting. Short message is set in modern times, post-COVID-19 pandemic. That is a very integral plot point, I would say. And it takes place, this is another very Silent Hill thing to me, it takes place in one apartment complex that they call the Villa. It's an abandoned apartment complex. Kettenstadt is a economically struggling town, very economically depressed. There's really nothing there for anyone. Young people have really no future within it. There's, you know, talks of people going away for college and never coming back. And because it is such a sad, depressed town, this apartment complex, the Villa, becomes a popular spot for teenagers. Our protagonist that we play as, her name is Anita, and she's an 18-year-old girl who wakes up in the Villa, and she is there to meet her friend Maya, who is an internet famous graffiti artist who goes by Cherry Blossom or CV. Anita herself is an artist as well, and she keeps getting text messages from Maya to meet her within the Villa, meet her within her studio, but she's not really getting straight answers from her. And this introduces the mechanic of the only item you have in this entire game, it's not a combat game, it's just a survival, no weapons, nothing. You only have your cell phone, and your cell phone acts as your flashlight, and then a text message service, and then similar to the radio in older Silent Hill games, the phone will glitch out and have distorted audio whenever there is there's only one monster, approaching you. So I like that. I really like the inclusion of the phone. I think the interface design of the cell phone is cool. I can get more into what I like and don't like later, but just noting that. We are also introduced to Anita's other best friend, Amelie, through the text messages, and Amelie reveals to us, and also to Anita, who seems to have forgotten this, Maya is dead and had jumped off the villa roof to be the next victim of this apartment complex. And this really freaks Anita out because she's still getting messages from someone claiming to be Maya, who just tells her, doesn't give her any info or anything like that. She's running around, she's exploring, she comes across this creature. It's the only monster in the game. Don't know the official name. I'm gonna call it the Sakura Blossom Monster. And this thing is chasing her around throughout the game. And she ends up on the roof, sees Maya's final artwork, and she ends up committing suicide in an attempt to be like Maya. Before she commits suicide, it is shown that she was jealous of the huge internet following that Maya had with her art, whereas Anita only got attention online when she posted risque photos of herself. I guess they don't show those photos, which good, I don't want to see that. They allude to that, and that's one, I'll get into it later, but that's one of several problems we have. After Anita jumps, she doesn't die. She ends up waking back up in the villa, and she gets a text from Maya saying that she can't leave until she finds it, with no other information. Every time Anita tries to text, just keeps replying, find it, find it. You know, she keeps exploring, we see more Sakura Blossom Monster, and eventually it's revealed that, and it gets a little confusing at this point for me. Amelie and Maya started to get close, which made Anita very jealous because Amelie was her only friend. So between Maya being more popular than her with her art online and her getting close to her only friend, there started to be some resentment building between Anita and Maya, even though Maya maybe didn't realize it. And this results in a flashback showing Anita taking a letter that was like a cry for help from Maya to Amelie. So essentially, because Amelie never reached out to help Maya because she wasn't aware how in need of a friend she was, Maya ends up jumping off the roof at the villa. So Anita feels responsible for Maya's death, calls Amelie and says it's her fault, and attempts off the roof once again. But of course, it's a loop, baby. She's wakes right back up in the villa. Right after the second attempt, it becomes a Silent Hill game, like for real, for real. Up until now, it kind of feels like an anti-bullying PSA. But once we get to this third act, it's like Silent Hill, the house down boots. This time we get some background on Anita's childhood. She's exploring the villa and she finds her childhood apartment, which this is proof that this is all supernatural, none of this is real kind of thing, because she did not grow up in these apartments. They're just manifesting in the game. And we find out that her mother was terribly abusive. After her father left, her mother just kind of gave up on parenting them in favor of trying to win over a new boyfriend. She would keep Anita and her younger brother locked in a closet, which eventually resulted in the death of her younger brother. And instead of fessing up to it, she just hid the corpse of the younger brother in a refrigerator, which a refrigerator is a recurring image that you get throughout the game that I didn't really think anything of until they dropped that bomb. And that is just so classic Silent Hill to me. It's just like devastatingly icky. And I love that. Love it. And so after this, there's a final big chase between the monster and Anita, where Anita starts collecting evidence that, like, Amelie and Maya did care about her, she's not alone, etc., etc., best friends for life, ooh type beat. And when she escapes the monster, she gets back to the roof, almost attempts to begin, but then Amelie texts her asking if she wants to go shopping, and she stops herself, the fog dissipates, and everything kind of gets back to normal. So she has left the loop, she's back in her life, she's good, you know, not great. Therapy for sure, Anita. Therapy for sure. It then shows a post by Amelie that shows that her and Anita left Kettenstad for college to start new lives and blossom and bloom. The plot has its ups and downs, base level. I'm going to get into some more detail here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pro and a con. Back and forth, lobby it back and forth. Rather than dump everything I like and everything I don't like, I'm gonna go back and forth, because I think that I just would prefer to do that. So let's start off with, I'm gonna start off with a con. So my biggest gripe with this game, and I think a lot of people's biggest gripe with this game, is the dialogue. The dialogue is so, like, unsubtle, it's almost painful. You know, a lot of it is Anita's, like, internal monologue to herself, and in general, voiceover like that can always feel a little bit cringy and weird and out of place, but it's just extra bad in this. It almost feels like a parody of what you would think a depressed teenager is, and that to me is the core issue at hand. You know, you can argue, and I have seen people argue that, oh, the dialogue's not that bad, like, that's how teenagers talk. It's not, though. I think it really trivializes the issues that teenagers go through, because what seems like a non-issue to a grown adult is the entire world of a teenager. And you can approach those topics with sincerity without it feeling like parody. Like, this feels like a middle-aged man or a millennial man wrote this. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like that. It doesn't feel authentic. In one of my older videos, I talked about the creepypasta Carmen Winstead, which is a notoriously terribly written creepypasta about a young girl who is bullied and then killed. And that is full of dialogue like this, but the difference between Carmen Winstead and Silent Hill: The Short Message is Carmen Winstead was written by an actual, like, 12-year-old bullied girl. So, of course it sounds like that. But this is written by real whole adults. I think that within Silent Hill as the franchise, there's a really well-written teenager that you can reference, Heather Mason, in Silent Hill 3. A lot of her dialogue feels authentically teenage. She has tantrums, and she's dramatic, and she's snarky, but the writers have respect for her, and they treat her problems realistically. And of course she has much larger problems than, like, Anita does, because Heather, you know, that story is dealing with the cult aspect of Silent Hill, and, like, you know, Heather aborts God. So yeah, she's got a little bit more going on than Anita, but regardless, I think that's an example of a really well-rounded teenage girl that feels like a real teenage girl. Anita just feels like every big stereotype about a depressed teen you could feel. Her depression is her character. That's it. There's nothing else there. And it kind of sucks because you're stuck with her the entire time, but you don't ever really get a grasp for her or care. Like, by the middle, I was like, Cherry Blossom, kill her ass, because you suck. Speaking of the Sakura Blossom monster, let's go on to a pro. The Sakura Blossom monster is the only creature in this entire game, which I think was very smart, because it allows full focus on her, and it kind of brings back what I think Silent Hill monsters should be, being a specific manifestation of the fears and guilt and trauma of the individual who is at the center of it. This character is, you know, it symbolizes Maya, it symbolizes Anita's mom, it symbolizes her jealousy, her anger, her frustration, and the design is stunning. Masahiro Ito, famous Silent Hill character designer, did come back for this, and you can tell it's just a damn good design. It's not over the top, it's not crazy, but it's just freaky and beautiful enough, and that's what makes Silent Hill Silent Hill, is the beauty and the just absolutely terrifying nature of the creatures. And the way that she moves at a different frame rate, so she just kind of sneaks up to you. It's very scary. She chases you. It's genuinely very stressful and terrifying. So that to me is one of the biggest takeaways, positive takeaways from this, is the Sakura Blossom monster. I think she is elevated to a top Silent Hill monster just immediately. Stunning work, and especially coming off of Downpour, a game that I love. That game has dog shit creature design. Like, the monsters are not good in that game, and that's something that I think has steadily declined. Like, I love Silent Hill 4. Those monsters are nowhere near as cool as the ones that are in 2 and 3. So I hope that this means a return to form with the upcoming games Forte and Townfall. I'm not sure if Masahiro Ito is coming back for those. I hope so. But even if he's not, I hope that people are, you know, taking notes. I do want to say, I just dissed on the character design in Silent Hill 4. I do want to walk back and just say that the Twin Victims is maybe my favorite monster in the entire franchise. But I'm gumheads. Going back to a criticism, beyond the dialogue and all that, it's just a painfully unsubtle game. You know, it hits you over the head with the topics of mental health and you know, things that teenagers deal with, and things that are important topics that really Silent Hill has dealt with in almost every game, just in different ways. The issue is, you know, like any Silent Hill game, there's lore drops in newspapers and magazines and journals, and that's great. I love that. That's a really cool mechanic of the Silent Hill games. That's how you find out what's going on. The problem is, immediately after reading these, Anita repeats what it said, but in plainer English, as if the player couldn't understand a very basic newspaper saying, like a report saying that Kedestat is essentially suffering, and then Anita would be like, wow, this is what our parents wanted for us? A dying town? Like, girl, shut up. I don't need that. I'm you. I read it. You don't need to reiterate it to me. Even some of the clues are just painfully unsubtle. Like, you keep coming across this, like, mental health in teens book, and it's just like, the COVID-19 pandemic made teens sad. And it's like, okay, yeah, it sure did. Thank you, book. I think that's frustrating, and it makes it feel like the game developers and the writers just have no respect for the player, and especially if it's targeted at young people, I feel like it's just a complete disregard for young people having any media literacy, which is just not the case. Young people know that they're depressed. They don't need it spoon-fed to them, and they can understand what a depressed person looks like without you, like, literally Webster's Dictionary defining it. Silent Hill has always dealt with topics like depression and abuse and all these things, and it's always been very subtle and something that you experience along the way through the very specific lens of the character that you're playing as. And part of the problem with this is it's such a short game that there was never going to be any room to slowly dig into it. So, like, I do understand, but at the same time, you could have successfully gotten your entire message across without Anita repeating everything 5 times. Another positive, I think that, again, you're gonna notice that the visuals are the thing that won me over about this game, and the whole thing looks great. Like, the environment of the villa feels very Silent Hill-y. It's really gross and torn down. The tension is immaculate. Something that I think is really promising and good about modern Silent Hill is not having to wait for the door to open. You know, in Silent Hill 2, you open the door, the screen goes black, and then you're inside. There is real terror and fear of pushing open a door and you don't know what's on the other side and seeing it in real time. I know people are complaining about that with Silent Hill 2 Remake. Couldn't be me, not an issue for me, and this game reaffirmed that for me. And the other world is super cool in this. It feels, you know, at the end when she's running, being pursued by this Sakura Blossom monster, it feels classic Silent Hill, the glowing red with the metal, very industrial. And I think the most compelling, cool environment in this entire game is one of the chase sequences. All of the post-it notes, which I forgot to mention in my subtlety part, I'm gonna go ahead and bring that back up. There's post-it notes all over this game that literally say, dumb, stupid, slut, you suck. And it's like, kids don't talk like that. Stop. But anyway, luckily, at one of the chases, all of the sticky notes turn into eyes, and they're like actual photos of eyes, so it feels almost like retro looking in the, you know, everything's very realistic 3D, but then you have these glitchy weird eyes. It just feels like old school games more so I loved that, and the noise of the eyes like opening and closing, kind of sounding like rustling paper. That's one of the coolest things I've seen in a Silent Hill game, period. So I think that if this signifies what the franchise is going to look like moving forward, aesthetically I'm thrilled. And I know that they're all being developed by different developers, so who knows? But I am hopeful that that's, you know, the vibe going forward. Another issue that I have, and this kind of relates to what I've already talked about, Silent Hill has always been a game that deals with some of the heaviest topics that you can cover. Mental health crisis, depression, child abuse, assault, forced birth. I mean, you name it. Like, it goes on and on. Religious trauma, child death, the prison system. Like, there's so much. It pretty much has tackled about every horrible thing you can think of. And it's always done it with great tact, and there's always some sort of warning in the beginning. The Silent Hill 4 warning is some parts of this game may be considered violent or cruel. And that's pretty blatant. And it doesn't go into specifics, but it covers everything, you know what I mean? And I think if you are a person who's going to play a Silent Hill game, there should be some assumption that you're going to be dealing with some heavy shit. Except for maybe Silent Hill 1. But we have moved so far from Silent Hill 1 at this point. That, in the short message, I already made a joke about it earlier when I was talking about making a video about Baraska, but there are five screens with a detailed unalive warning. And I'm not talking, like I said, the Silent Hill 4 one, it's a sentence. This is paragraphs, resources, like it covers the whole screen. They show this 5 times, and they don't just show it at the beginning and the end. They show it every time that Anita jumps. They show it. The first time she jumped, I thought the game ended because the warning screen came up. And while I get what they're going for, because I would say this game dealt with the most direct of any other Silent Hill game, I think it was too much. Anyone playing a Silent Hill game has to meet Konami and the developers halfway, knowing that this isn't going to be a fun game, this could be a very triggering game, and one warning at the beginning would have done it. I don't think that the way that the game portrays makes it look glamorous or like something you want to do. The only reason I would see a warning be appropriate repeated that many times is if the game was trying to glamorize it, but at the same time, any game that would try to glamorize it wouldn't even bother with the warnings. So I know that the developers in Konami are trying to be careful and be sensitive, and you know, things have changed a lot since the original games came out with things like 13 Reasons Why that kind of were glamorizing. So I get it. I do really worry that this could become a regular thing for Silent Hill, and that would really bother me. I am completely on board for warnings being in place, but I think they should not break the immersion of the game. I think it should be beginning, end, and we live in the internet age. You can go online, and there are detailed listings of all the things that are going to happen in the game if you're comfortable with that. I have no issue with people doing that. That's not something I like to do, but if you don't want to be exposed to certain things that really upset you or could put you in a bad place, absolutely look up a comprehensive guide that can tell you that. You know, websites like Does the Dog Die and things like that, I think are really great assets in this age for people who want a more comprehensive guide of what they're getting into. But I don't think the game needs to literally break the game multiple times in order to remind you. It almost feels pandering. I don't know, it's very strange. I think that it almost didn't feel like they actually were caring about the player. It was more like, we're gonna do this so we don't get called out for being insensitive. And it's like, you're Silent Hill. This is your bread and butter. You're not being insensitive. You're approaching subjects that a lot of people don't want to approach in usually a very tactful way. And I think this game was very tactful. I don't think that it glamorized any of the mental health issues or the... I don't think that it made Anita look correct for bullying. I don't think it made it look like she should kill herself. It was always, you always had Amelie. I think the inclusion of the character Amelie was smart because she was always that person wanting Anita to continue, wanting her to get better, wanting her to get help. And because of that, like, I don't think it was necessary. Another thing I really liked the live action cutscenes. This was something my husband and I were going back and forth about. He didn't love them. He thought it broke the immersion. I don't know. This is such a short game that it almost feels like a playable cutscene at times. And so I think, like, getting the proper cutscenes was kind of fun. They were very weird, and they did kind of feel out of place, but I almost liked that about them. I can't really articulate why I liked them. I do wish they were just subbed, not dubbed. That took me out every time Maya was talking in what I assume was Japanese. I wish they had just kept the Japanese and just had the subtitles, because that threw me off. I struggle with dubs. It confuses my brain. But I thought that was really kind of fun and interesting. Another big con that I have, and you'll notice all my issues with the game are plot and writing based. For being such a short game, it tackles way too many issues. This game, it took me 2 hours. I've seen some people say it take them 90 minutes. It deals with depression, bullying, child abuse, sibling sexual assault, teen pregnancy, over-sexualization online bullying. I feel like I'm even missing something. There a lot. And you won't be surprised to find out that almost all of those things are not really addressed to their completion. There are two that really just drive me bonkers. Like, why even include these as plot points? Because all I'm doing is thinking about them in the back of my head, and they are never explored. We come into Amelie's house at one point in the villa. And it's alluded that her brother is, I guess, sexually assaulting her. That's how I interpret it. Because she keeps talking about the way my brother looks at me, and I don't want to be alone with my brother. Never addressed again. I guess you could argue it's one of the reasons she wants to get out of Kedistad, but it seems like he's left, and he only comes back and visits. And I think there's enough motivator of just Kedistad sucking for there to not be another reason for her to get out. Like, it's just, that almost feels, I don't want to say it's gratuitous because they don't linger on it enough for it to be gratuitous, but it's such a weird thing to just drop and never follow through with. And the other thing is, we find out that Maya was pregnant when she committed, and well, yes, I think that is something that often happens to teenage girls who become pregnant. They are often met with violent ends, whether it is or at the hands of the person that impregnated them. It's never really followed through. They keep alluding to she met this boy that she loved, but he got taken away from her. And I don't know if that means he killed himself at the villas or he left her because she was getting bullied. I don't know. It's never really fully realized, and it's just such a large thing to drop and then never pick up again. So I wish that they didn't focus on so many different things. And the first half of the game is so intense on the like cyberbullying and likes on social media, and that's what all kids need, which again goes back to my earlier point of like you were trivializing teenagers so much with that by the time the game really kicks into full Silent Hill gear with the third act, with Anita's childhood and her abuse at the hands of her mother, that it's almost jarring. I don't want to say I enjoy the parts of her being abused as a child, because I don't enjoy that, but that is what I found the most compelling. I wish that had started to be sprinkled in a little bit more. You have things like the fridge keeps appearing, and there'll be like, you know, Anita says, oh no, my mom loved me, but no, she didn't, obviously. But they lay it all out at the end there, and it just feels like it fully pivots from being, like I said, a bullying PSA to then being what feels much more authentically Silent Hill, which is slowly unraveling kind of the past that you've blocked out for, you know, your own self-preservation. And I think that the two could have been intertwined a little bit more, because clearly her upbringing is what made her so insecure and protective of her one and only friend. But because they feel like such separate entities within the game, the first half feels kind of inauthentic, and then the second half just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it just doesn't feel very cohesive. So I like parts of it, but there's just too much going on for a 2-hour game, and I don't think there's enough going on for an 8-hour game, so I don't know. One thing that I thought I didn't like, but upon, you know, reflection, I only played this literally less than 24 hours ago, so this is pretty fresh, pretty raw feelings, but the use of the pandemic. So it's not like hitting you over the head with stuff about the pandemic. It mostly is referred to that there was supposed to be economic development in Kedistad, but the pandemic fully shut that down, suffered from the 2008 financial crisis, and then COVID was the nail in the coffin. At first, I was like, I struggle with pandemic-related media. It feels like too soon to me. However, the more I thought about it, you know, that's very easy for me as a fully grown adult. I was a full adult when the pandemic hit. I had a job, house, fiance, whatever. Wasn't dealing with it the same way that kids were. And so Anita's 18 in this, so she was just starting high school or even maybe in middle school when the pandemic started. That them kids up. Like that was a huge developmental stunt for an entire generation of children. And I think that the game is alluding to the isolation that kids Anita's age felt because of that. And it's not really changed, unfortunately. So I do actually, on retrospect, enjoy that and enjoy the nods to that. And I think that's a much smarter and more subtle way of talking about, you know, how kids are forced to interact digitally, even with the friends that are closest to them because of world circumstance. And I think that that's just a more interesting and less knocking you over the head way of talking about the isolation of teenagers and how, you know, the world around them has caused them to be more depressed and antisocial than, you know, even my generation was. And I'm not even 30 yet. The last thing that I'm going to talk about that really scares me is there is an article that Anita stumbles upon talking about something called the Silent Hill phenomenon. It's just talking about how post-pandemic around the world, fog is literally appearing and depressed and mentally ill people are having delusions of grandeur, essentially, associated with the fog, saying, oh, this started in Silent Hill. My concern about this, A, it's corny. It's corny as we'll get that out of there. I love corny, but this is a little too corny for me to just name drop the Silent Hill phenomenon. My concern about this is I think it could be setting a precedent for this new wave of Silent Hill games that they're going to double down on the Silent Hill of Silent Hill 2, which is personal demons, trauma, all that, and fully just retire the cult aspect of 1 and 3, and 4, and Homecoming. And I think that it's always very easy to be like, oh, well, the cult thing, that was 1, and then 3 was a sequel to 1. No, the cult is pretty much integral in every single game except for 2 and Downpour, really, because in 1, obviously, it's the catalyst for events. 3 is a direct sequel to 1. You have Heather dealing with Claudia and the Order. 4, Walter Sullivan is a victim of the Order and carries out some of their doctrine kind of rogue. And then Homecoming is all about, like I said earlier, it's essentially a schism. You have the Order and then kind of the offshoot of the Order that develops in Shepherd's Glen. And to me, as much as I don't think the cult always needs to be at the forefront, it's part of what makes Silent Hill, and I think that as we've left the games, the only thing people think about when they think about Silent Hill is Silent Hill 2, and that's just not a full representation of this franchise. I think a lot of people complaining about the new games and stuff sometimes consider Silent Hill 2 to be the only Silent Hill game, because so many people fully write off Homecoming and Downpour, when Homecoming really adds a lot to the lore and world building of Silent Hill, definitely more so than Downpour does. And I would hate to see that aspect of the franchise disappear. Yes, I am kind of assuming the worst from what is just one little, you know, article that Anita stumbles upon, but it's just kind of food for thought. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I personally can't imagine Forte having anything to do with the cult. I think that's going to be very hardcore personal demons, all that jazz, just because of the nature of the setting and the time period. But Townfall could revert back to your traditional Silent Hill, dealing more with the Order and things like that. So we'll just have to wait and see. Overall, I don't hate this game. I don't think it's perfect either, though. I think the visuals, stunning, 10 out of 10. And I just hope the writing is a little bit better for games going forward. I do think it's sad that this is, you know, the second time we've ever had the opportunity to have a female protagonist in a Silent Hill game, and she's basically a nothing burger. filled with depression, and there's just nothing else to her. So, you know, I think Forte is gonna have a female lead, so I do hope that she is a little more realized. But regardless, it was really cool to play a Silent Hill game in 2024. It has me excited to see what's gonna happen next. This is just a little taste, it is just a little tidbit, but I do want to prove to you all that I am not a Konami shill just because I'm excited for the 2 remake. Let me know your thoughts on the short message. What do you agree with me on? What do you disagree with me on? What of the new games are you most excited for? And, thanks for watching. Bye!